Welcome to Elemental Awakening. This is a special episode called Psyched Out. Based on our movie, our documentary Psyched Out, we like to talk to people about plant medicine and their experiences. So whether it's a full-length interview from the documentary itself, or we're interviewing someone who has had their life transformed, studies plant medicine, or is just a psychonaut, stay tuned. This is the show for you.
I think what psychedelics do more effectively than anything else is break down barriers. The barriers that we erect to hide ourselves from ourselves. We all create a narrative about ourselves, about how we go through life, about our impact on others. And because we're writing that narrative, we make ourselves the hero of the story. But we may not be the hero of the story for other people. And they may have a very different view of us, which we're blocked off from seeing. What I found with psychedelics, particularly with ayahuasca, is that it enables me to see myself from the other person's point of view. It helps me to understand the impact that I've had on that person, and particularly if that impact has been negative in any way, it brings that home to me very clearly at an experiential level. I feel the hurt that I may have caused with a thoughtless or unkind word, and it makes me wish very much to become a more positive person and to change any behavior that is negative towards others. I've had this experience again and again. It's very difficult to change a lifetime of bad habits, but the first step is the realization that we are locked into some bad habits, and then that's where the work begins. A lot of people complain about psychedelics and they say, oh, you think it's an easy path to enlightenment. It's not an easy path to enlightenment at all, because all it does is open the door and allow you to see the truth about yourself. The work comes in integrating that lesson and living it in your life experience, and that's real work, and that can go on for years. But the realization being provided by the psychedelics is of colossal value, and I think that's certainly, I'm speaking from my own experience there.
Thank you. So can you provide a quick list of some examples that you've found through some of your work from studying ancients of psychedelic use? And was it available to everyone or just a certain few? And do you think it's a natural part of our diet? And are we deficient right now because we have it?
The interesting situation is that we only start to get firm evidence of the use of psychedelics. You see, it's difficult to know when you go back 20, 30,000 years into the past, but when you encounter the ancient cave and rock art around the world, which certainly goes back 40,000 years, you find in that compelling and irrefutable evidence that the artists were using psychedelics. And their plant of choice may have been different in different cultures, but the art itself is manifesting the experiences that are only had in deeply altered states of consciousness. So we can say that, and this oddly enough is coupled with evidence of a great leap forward in the evolution of human behavior, and we become ourselves actually when the first evidence of psychedelics is encountered. Now, were our ancestors using psychedelics even before they were recording it in permanent media like rock and cave art? I rather think they were. Probably they were doing body painting. You know, we won't have those images because the bodies have perished. What we have with the cave art is a durable medium. So I would think it goes back much further than that. And I think that the encounter with psychedelics, whenever it began, was fundamental in ushering us into what I would call the modern human mind. I think that has emerged from that. And I'm not the first person to say that. Let's pay tribute to the late great Terence McKenna with his amazing book, Food of the Gods. But let's also pay tribute to academics like David Lewis Williams at the University of Witwatersrand, who've done the hard scientific work, the investigation of the art, and initially against a lot of opposition, have presented the very persuasive evidence that we can only explain the commonalities in rock and cave art around the world by invoking the possibility that those artists were using psychedelic visionary substances in order to enter deeply altered states of consciousness. And then when they returned from the altered state of consciousness to the normal, alert, problem-solving state of consciousness, that's when they remembered and painted their visions.
So do you think saying that we are deficient of psychedelics now could be a cause for this insane society that we've created? Do you think?
I think that I think it's a little bit more complicated than that. I think that the insanity of modern society and the utter unconsciousness of modern society is a product of multiple forces that are at work. But one of those forces is that our society particularly values and venerates what I call the alert problem-solving state of consciousness. And when I say that, I want to be clear that there is a place for the alert problem-solving state of consciousness. It is one of the states of consciousness that's available to human beings, and it has very definite uses, and I don't want to abandon it altogether. The problem is that our society it gives a monopoly to that state of consciousness. It says that that's really the only valid state of consciousness, and all other states of consciousness are somehow harmful or bad, unless in some way they support the alert problem-solving state of consciousness and the social structure, a kind of top-down hierarchical structure that is based upon that. So it's okay to go and get drunk because that gives you a little break, and then next day, despite your hangover, you can get back to your job, or it's okay for Big Pharma to prescribe all kinds of consciousness-altering drugs to deal with often invented psychological issues such as depression or hyperactivity disorder. Again, these accepted consciousness-altering substances like alcohol, like the pharmaceutical drugs, they actually in a way underpin the alert problem-solving state of consciousness. But psychedelics don't. Psychedelics lead to questioning about everything, about ourselves, about our place in the world, and about social structures. And this is something that the dominated powers in our society don't want to see happen. And that's why they've demonized psychedelics, why they've created this absurd, monstrous, evil enterprise called the war on drugs, and why they want us all to buy into the notion that the alert problem-solving state of consciousness is all we need. And that's why I think we're, as a society, manifestly clinically insane, that we do things that are obviously mad, like the proliferation of nuclear weapons. Only a society that's truly insane could do that. A sane society would eliminate these poisonous and deadly substances from the earth as fast as possible. The way that we're destroying the rainforests, that's madness too. And that is the short-term pursuit of immediate profits, which the alert problem-solving state of consciousness feels is okay. If we embraced other states of consciousness, the deeply altered states of consciousness, the deeply reflective states of mind that they introduce, we would be having second thoughts about all of that, and we would gradually be returning ourselves to sanity. So I think that it, as a particular antidote to the psychological sickness of the modern world, psychedelics have a huge role to play. I'm not saying that there's some physical deficiency. I'm saying that because of the society we live in and the way that it controls our minds and structures our thoughts, we need something very powerful to break us out of that. And there they are, the ancient visionary plants, which have been co-evolving with mankind for tens of thousands of years, which were always our allies, and they are coming forward as our allies again to save us effectively from ourselves.
In your opinion, what is consciousness? In a short answer.
The short answer is I don't know what consciousness is, and nobody knows what consciousness is. All we know, you know, I know, everybody knows, we've got it. Mm-hmm. We know we're conscious, but actually what it is the greatest mystery of science. Science has not explained what consciousness is. It can describe certain aspects of it, but explain it cannot do. So there's a general sort of prevailing view amongst particularly the materialist faction of science that consciousness is, quote, an epiphenomenon of brain activity. That the brain manufactures consciousness. And that's why scientists who take that view can't possibly believe in life after death, for example, because, my goodness, if the brain makes consciousness, the brain is dead, obviously consciousness is gone. But the analogy that I put forward, and I've done this several times, and I did in the TED Talk, is that it's equally possible that the relationship of consciousness to the brain, using an analogy, is more like the relationship of the TV signal to the TV set. The TV set is not, making those pictures. The image, the signal is separate from the TV set. So maybe the brain is more like a receiver or a transceiver of consciousness. Right now we don't know, and it's an area that needs deep investigation. And you know what? We've got the tools to do it. We've got the psychedelics. There is no more efficient way to put somebody into a deeply altered state of consciousness and to explore what that state of consciousness really means than something like dimethyltryptamine, DMT. It's a very powerful force. And right now, our society is refusing to investigate that. It's refusing to use psychedelics as a modality for investigating the mystery of consciousness. And that's a great mistake. And that comes out of the idiotic and monstrous war on drugs. Gradually, science is looking into new research with psychedelics, looking at their therapeutic potential. But the next big step is to use psychedelics to investigate the mystery of consciousness itself. And I believe that that's where the big breakthroughs are going to come.
Great.